Folks, welcome to episode 1 of Study Hall. I can't thank you all enough for tuning in, watching, listening, whatever it may be. In our first episode, I'm sitting down to talk to longtime friend Alane Gianneti. Alane is the creator and talent behind Write Pretty For Me. Write Pretty For Me is a modern calligraphy business that specializes in wedding calligraphy. Honestly, if you're having a wedding and you're looking for it to look fucking bonkers amazing, Elaine's the person that you're going to hire. Elaine is an interesting individual that I was super excited to sit down and talk to because of her venture into entrepreneurship. You know, she's worked in corporate America as a creative and she made the jump. And for somebody like myself that has had similar desires and also gives in sometimes to the fears of what that means, I really kind of wanted to figure out a little bit more of the backstory for how she got into this. And so in our conversation, we dive in to learn a little bit more about Elaine's background, kind of where she comes from, what was the general genesis for starting Right Pretty For Me and taking that leap of faith, and where she looks at growing the business next. So without further ado, let's jump into my conversation with Elaine. All right. Well, hey, I really appreciate you agreeing to do this today.
Yeah.
So for anybody that doesn't know Alane Gianetti, amazing calligrapher. I was trying to think about this. You and I have known each other for like 7, 8 years now.
Yeah, I don't even know how long, but it's been a while, I feel like. I'm trying
It's
to
been a
remember when
bit,
we first
right?
connected on like Instagram.
We were both kind of like
Yeah. Yeah,
in
because
the
you were,
calligraphy scene.
yeah, I was gonna say you were doing like lettering stuff and I was doing my calligraphy lettering stuff, and somehow we crossed paths.
To go back a little bit. So you're based out of Hoboken, New Jersey, right?
Yep.
Did you grow up
Yeah.
in New Jersey?
I I grew up in New Jersey, like 45 minutes from Hoboken, so I haven't ventured too far. But I moved to Hoboken when I got a job in the city. So I was working in Manhattan for like 5.5 years, and Hoboken was a really convenient and easy place to be.
Even I'm always like curious about this because I think about just from like an artist perspective. Like when I was younger, really the people that I kind of gravitated towards and I loved as creatives. So like I'm
Yep.
curious, like were you a pretty creative kid at heart?
Yeah, definitely. I was like always doing something art related, whether it was like drawing or like making up stories or whatever the case may be. And then I ended up majoring in art in college. I was a studio art major. My parents were like, cool. What are you going to do with that? And I was like, I'll figure it out.
It's just like blind faith by the people paying those bills. Was there anybody that like do you remember early on that was like super influential for you that like you wanted to emulate, and whether if it was in art, music, anything
Yeah.
along those lines?
I mean, I have always loved Salvador Dali. He's always been like my favorite artist. I think because his stuff was so like crazy but so realistic, and I really liked. I'm a very realistic artist when I'm like actually creating artwork. So I feel like I was really drawn to that. But the way that he could create these like worlds in his head, but make it look like it was something real that like he was sitting there, looking at and painting and referencing. He's always been like one of my top for sure.
What was it? So hold on, you said when you had gone to college, what did you go to school for?
Studio art.
Okay, so you was fine art from yeah.
Yeah. So, well, like through college, it was like you took painting classes and you had to take like a sculpture class or, drawing classes. So I ended up kind of my concentration was in drawing, even though I dabbled in like photography, painting, sculpture. And then by senior year, my like thesis was kind of like studying the figure. So I did a lot of figure drawings. My dad walked into my like art thesis show and he was like, cool, there's just like a bunch of naked people on the wall that you've been drawing for the year. He was like, I don't get it. And I was like, that's okay. You don't have to get it.
You're like, it's boobies and butts. It's okay, Dad. Don't worry about it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But just like studying the figure and like negative space and like what can you put into a drawing? What can you leave out and like still understand what the form is that's like being created?
Right.
So that was
So
like kind of what my thesis was at the end of the year.
So when thinking about graduation coming up, like, did you have any ideal job in mind, or were you just kind of like a floating artist and you were like, let's kind of
Yeah,
see where this
no,
goes?
I mean, I like did not think that I would be able to actually make money as an artist. Like, I don't know how you felt growing up.
Yeah.
I feel like you were also very creative growing up. Yes, is that
I was,
correct
yeah.
to
I mean,
assume?
I had a mom that was an illustrator and a painter, and a dad who is a musician, poet, writer. It was a formula for a disaster to make a creative kid. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
But yeah, I feel like it was kind of like the starving artist thing, like I feel like that's all I really knew was like, well, you could do art, but like, how are you going to make money? It's going to be really hard. You may not make
right,
money until you're dead. So what's the
right.
point?
So was the whole idea
um,
then for you picking a major of like, I'm not even worried about career. I just know what I like, and I just want to go spend my time doing that.
yeah, I was basically like, I love art. I will figure it out. But as graduation was approaching, I was thinking more along the lines of like trying to get a gallery job or a job in an art museum, something like that. And I that's kind of the path that I took for like 2 years after college. I had gotten an internship at an art museum. So I was working in like their curatorial department for like modern and contemporary art, and basically just doing like a bunch of research for the curator, which was cool. But I didn't love it enough to start to think, oh, maybe this should be a career path. And then I was working at an art gallery for like 2 years, basically doing their like graphic design and marketing, advertising materials and whatnot, and just also at working as like a gallery assistant. And that was fun. But it got to the point where it was like I needed health insurance, and it wasn't, it was just a small gallery. They didn't offer health insurance. So then I started to think about like, what else am I going to do? And then that's when I got the job in the city at Random House, which was in the cover art department. So I was at first like a project manager there, and then I switched over to actually designing covers.
You as a pro, like I cannot imagine being a project manager. It's like my worst nightmare ever.
I actually enjoyed it.
Did you?
I really did. I feel like
Oh,
I'm a very organized person, and I
right.
liked having my hand in like almost every department within publishing. Like it was a really
Yeah.
good job for never having worked in a publishing house before, because I got to learn the ins and outs of like the entire process, and I got to meet a lot of people in different departments.
Right.
It just got annoying when you're trying to like wrangle the designers for
I was
like,
gonna say you're wrangling cats, like, and every
something.
designer is like a
Yeah.
precious little baby that like,
Yeah.
don't tell me what I'm doing is bad. I'm curious. So you said that you were doing marketing for the gallery and stuff. Was that pre or like post social media marketing, or was it mostly like print publication stuff? Or
That was definitely pre social media. So it was print publication and then their own like postcards and mailers. They would advertise in, I don't even remember what the magazine was that they would advertise in. It was kind of like a local magazine. So we would create ads for that. And then like for every gallery exhibit, they would have one once a month. They'd have an opening. So I'd have to design like the postcard mailers that would be sent out and that kind of stuff.
and then you had the transition into publishing, and you were
Mm-hmm.
working more than later than the line is like, was it just basically a graphic designer for the publishing company?
Yep, exactly. Yeah. So I was, like I said, I started off as the product manager, and then I switched over to a cover designer. So basically designing like covers
Yeah, I have one
for,
of your books. You remember
yes,
this? It's
you
like
do.
the cat, like, what is it? How to talk to your cats about gun safety?
Yes, that's it.
It's such a good book. It's so fucking good.
That was so
Um,
funny when you said that. I was like, I designed that.
I remember when you were like, "Yeah, this was mine." I was like, "Get out, dude! I just
Yep.
randomly picked this up," which is a good one with it.
Yeah.
So, working as a graphic designer, what was that corporate life like for you in terms of like work life balance? Kind of how are you? I don't know, like how were you feeling from a creative stance? How are you also feeling from like a mental stance at that time? Because it's something that like I'm still in the thick of it, and I struggle
Yep.
with it all the time. So I'm just
Yeah.
curious of like where your head was at.
Even when I did move over to cover design, it definitely was more of a creative role, but it wasn't things that I was like super passionate about. And you also had a lot of opinions as far as what it was that you were designing or what they wanted a cover to look like. So you could come in with a cool idea, but it has to go through my boss, the creative director. It has to go through sales. It has to go through the editor. So everybody is sitting there, saying, well, sure, that's a great idea, but like that's never going to sell at B&N or something like that. The creative aspect was kind of lacking in the 9 to 5. And then, I mean, honestly, as far as work life balance goes, I feel like publishing was actually pretty good with that. Like it was pretty much a 9 to 5 job. You didn't really have to stay much later. I feel like the publishing industry is notoriously underpaid, so they kind of throw a lot of perks at you. Like I think I started and I had like 20 vacation days on top of like 10 sick days and like I think it was like 5 personal days. Like it was insane. They're just like, here, take time off because we know we don't pay you anything. So I'm like, cool, I have all these vacation days and I can't afford to go anywhere. So work life
Yeah,
balance, it
that's a
was,
bitch.
yeah, but whatever, it's fine. But yeah, so work life balance was okay. But like I said, the creative aspect wasn't super fulfilling, which is kind of how I ended up where I am now.
Okay, so what year are we looking at that the genesis, the idea for Write Pretty for Me? When are we kind of looking at that, the starting this?
Yeah, so I picked up calligraphy, I think it was in like 2013. And at that point, it was just a hobby. Like it was just, I came home from work, I wanted to do something creative again and create some sort of art. And this was like really easy to just kind of like spend an hour doing, not make a big mess in a small apartment, and then just clean up.
Right.
So I was doing that for like a couple years actually until one of my friends was getting married. I think that was in 2015, and she
Okay.
asked if I could calligraphy her wedding envelopes. So that was really the first time that I thought or even realized, like, oh, this is a service that people are looking for in a specific industry and will pay people to do. So that was the first time that I
Right.
had thought about this as like, oh, maybe I can make some side money doing this. So yeah, I think that was the end of 2015. So then going into 2016 is really when I like started to, I think I like made my Instagram public and like started to just share practice things that I was working on. I like put together a real
Hmm.
scrappy website and just kind of started telling friends and family, hey, I'm
Yeah.
taking on commissions. Like if you want a pretty like quote written for your wall, or if you know somebody who's getting married, let me know. This is now something that I'm trying to practice and offer.
At a certain, and you're probably already going to talk about this. I'm just interrupting you, but
No, it's okay.
was it this part-time path that like all of a sudden started to open up for you financially, and it kind of just like, like maybe I need to scratch an itch and see if this is a long-term,
Yep, that's
business opportunity?
exactly, yeah, that's exactly what happened. I think it was in 2016 that I partnered with, there was a stationery store in Hoboken that designed wedding invitations. So they were looking for basically an in-house calligrapher that they could send all of their wedding clients to be able to like address all of the envelopes for the invitations that they were designing. They didn't have anybody in house that could do calligraphy. So that ended up being a great partnership because they were like, a 10-minute walk from my apartment. So I could easily pick up envelopes, drop them back off really easy. And they really like gave me the bulk of my side work when I first started. And then, people that I worked with started referring me to their friends and their family and so on. So yeah, it kind of just ended up being this snowball effect where by like 2017, I was working like every night after work. I was working every weekend. Like all of my free time was pretty much gone. Like going back to work life balance, there was no more work life balance. It was just work. But I was okay with it because I did start to see the potential that there was with the business that I was kind of almost unknowingly creating, because at the time I was still kind of just like, oh, this is just like a great way to make some side cash and like have more money than what publishing was paying me.
I mean, were you finding that there was like a tipping of the scale in terms of like I am making more money doing calligraphy than where I'm at in publishing?
Yeah, it wasn't so much that I was making more. It was that I saw that there was a potential to make more than what I was making in my corporate job. And it just kind of got to the point that I felt like I was being toured in two different directions and I was just kind of like half assing both things, right? Like I wasn't really giving my publishing job 100% of my focus and energy anymore because I was always thinking about the calligraphy, but then I also couldn't give that 100% of my energy because I still had a 9 to 5 job that I was working. And it was really hard to like balance the two. And like I said, it just got to the point where I was like, I feel like I have enough side work coming in that if I quit my job, like I could turn this into full time. Like I think that there would be enough work to be able to fill my schedule and make a full time salary off of what I'm doing now.
And we're talking about fully supporting the lifestyle that you were living. So we're not like moving
Yep.
back in with mom and dad, and we're not,
No.
that like, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
No. Yeah. Fully supporting the lifestyle. And like, Granted, I know everybody's looks very different. Like I was single at the time. I mean, I still don't have children. I didn't
Yeah,
have my
those both
dog at the time. Like
those
there
all
were,
really help.
yeah, there were a
Yeah.
lot of factors going into that. And it was just like, I felt like that was the time to take the risk, right? Like when absolutely nobody else was relying on me. I was in, an apartment where I knew that the rent wasn't going to be raised to crazy prices. Like I kind of knew what my living situation looked like and had a very good idea of what my bills would be. And like I said, nobody else was relying on me for anything. So I felt like I could take that risk very easily.
Well, I still think it's super. It's like a courageous thing to do because even like you talking about for the fact of having health insurance, like
Hmm.
having vacation days where you're paid time off, like all of these things, like that's a tough undertaking. I think at a lot of times,
Yeah,
definitely better to do it like you said when you're young and you have no dependents and there's nothing
right.
that's relying on you. But it was just mostly of you seeing an opportunity and you were like, I just want to go for this.
Oh no, I was just gonna say, and I just felt so much more fulfilled on like the calligraphy jobs that I was working on than on the 9 to 5. So it was, a combination of like seeing potential income, but also just like enjoying the work that I was doing way more and like feeling like I had more of a purpose than just going into the publishing company every single day and like doing whatever, I had to do there.
I mean, I think the purpose, that's a beautiful way to put it. I think it's a huge thing that like us as creatives, typically when you're working in like corporate America, like that just dies at the wayside a lot of times. It's a really hard thing to grasp and find time for. And like you said, you're either maybe you're kind of squeezing some of that out of like what your work is, but a lot of it, it's like, no, you're still putting the hours in after you clock out, finding projects to work on.
Right.
When you were starting the business, I'm curious, like with your friends and family, like were there many naysayers? Was there any like concerns or just, again, people
Yeah.
trying to like make sure you're not stepping off the edge and like, into the fire. But I'm just curious for like, what your security blanket kind of had to say about that.
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And I feel like I was very lucky because all of my friends were super supportive. They were all like, I think this is a great idea. I think you should go for it. And then, same thing with my family. I was definitely nervous telling my parents that I
Right.
was going to quit my job and just try this. But my dad has owned his own business for all of my life. I mean, he's retired now, but he was a general contractor. So, like, he had that entrepreneurial spirit for sure. He knew what it was like to own his own business. So, he definitely had words of like, it's not easy. So, I want you to know that going into it. But I think he also didn't give himself the opportunity to do exactly what he wanted to with his life and his career. So, when I was telling him this, he was very supportive. He was like, I don't want you to regret anything. Like, don't make the same mistakes that I did. Like, if this is what you really want to be doing, then go and do it and you'll figure it out. And then my mom also was just nothing but supportive. And I think that she also was kind of like, this is really cool because I never had an opportunity to do something like this when I was younger and your age. So like I'm thrilled that I get to now watch my daughter do something like this. So I feel very fortunate that like I had nothing but support around me, which definitely helps.
Yeah, that's huge. I mean, I would kind of say the same for my parents as well, but it was a little bit more again of like the initial thing where it was like blind faith, where they're like, we get it, but we don't get it, but like
Yeah.
go do it, which is
Yep.
awesome. Okay, so the business kind of started to take fold in like 2017, twenty
Yep.
eighteen for you, right? You're
Mm-hmm.
pretty established. Now looking forward, we're in 2023 right now.
Yes.
The one thing that like I think you do a really amazing job at with social media, and I was kind of curious to talk to you about this, is this whole
Yeah.
idea about creating art versus content creation. And so, obviously, with your business, content creation is a huge thing for you. That's how you're garnering an audience. That's how you're putting out there of like the work that you're doing.
Right.
I'm curious to kind of like hear your thoughts a little bit on this. On a, do you still feel pretty fulfilled in like the work that you're doing? And then I know it's a ton of extra time to be putting stuff on Instagram and TikTok, and whether if you're using formerly known as Twitter as X or whatever the hell it may
Yeah.
be. Um, but then also B, like, I'd love to kind of hear like your perspective about for content creation, like, does it need to have intention or is like the intention enough of just put a ton of it out there because you beat the algorithm, you get eyeballs, which then in turn builds
Mm-hmm.
your audience?
Yeah, that's a great question and something that I definitely struggle with. Answering your first one, I definitely am still fulfilled, but there was definitely a turn that it took where it's like, this isn't artwork that I'm creating for myself anymore. Like, this is a business. Like, I have to make money doing it now. And so, not that the love of it has gone away, but I think having to hustle for quite a few years in order to like make sure I'm making ends meet and just, keeping up pretty much like with,
Hmm.
other people, I guess. That definitely makes it more exhausting than I thought it would be. Like when I first started out, like I don't have the energy that I once
Yeah.
did. Like I was looking back at my numbers, like I like to look at, your metrics and stuff over the years. And I think it was in like 2021, right after COVID, I think I had like 90 some odd weddings that year, which is just insane. Like I don't even know how I did that. This year I have like 34, I think, and I'm like, that feels great. Like that feels like a nice number. 90 was absolutely insane, but I also think that I just like powered through, and there was a lot more of that like feeling of new business momentum going on, whereas now it's like I'm trying to figure out, what do I want the rest of my life to look like, or at least like the next couple years, what do I want that to look like? And I know I don't want it to be like the hustle anymore. I want to enjoy what I'm creating again. I want to really enjoy the clients that I'm working with, and then also start to like pull some new creative outlets back into my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's huge. I mean, I'm curious, like, still giving you time to kind of answer the second part of that question, but you touched on
Yeah.
something of, in terms of the 90 versus you're down to what, 34, you said,
Yes.
for your clients.
Yep.
How did you shrink the gap so much? Was it just in terms of like
Ah,
looking at revaluing your price points or finding other ways to automate and templatize the services that you're offering? Like, what was that
yeah.
process like for you?
A lot of it had to do with getting really clear on like what my pricing structure looked like. I mean, I've definitely raised my prices over the years. I think the biggest thing that I did last year, which really took shape this year, because with weddings you're kind of booking like a year-ish in advance. So last year, as I was booking clients for this year, I increased my pricing minimum. So that was one thing that like I never had when I started. It didn't matter what you wanted to spend with me, like if it was a $50 sign or if it was $1,000 wedding. So I would just take on anything and everything. But after 2021 of having 90 weddings, I was like, I can't do this anymore. It's also just way too confusing to work with that many clients, and I really like being able to get to know my couples and really feel like I'm serving them well, rather than just like churning out sign after sign after sign. So I implemented a pricing minimum, which I've just gradually like increased year after year. So that has helped. And then definitely like automating systems. So that way I'm not spending as much time like doing the same thing over and over again that needs to be done for every single client. You know what I mean? It's like I have email templates now. I have templates that I send out to them to like collect all of the details that I need for their wedding, things like that. So I've been able to just save some time on my end, but also still keep my income the same with just restructuring my pricing and like how I put together proposals, including like a design fee, which is also something that I never did. Like I never included a design and project management fee basically on my invoices. And I'm like, but I'm spending so much time. Like I'm not just spending time design, like creating. I'm spending time emailing you. I'm spending time like creating these templates for you and making sure that you have everything you need and hopping on 3-month check-in calls. Like I definitely pride myself on how I interact with my clients, but it's like that can't come at a cost to my time. And nobody has ever questioned that design fee. So I'm like, of course, it took me like 5 years to put this on invoice, but whatever.
Have you had clients that have had requests for you that are like completely outside your comfort zone?
I mean, yes. I feel like even just some of the things that I've like been working on this year, like, and that thinking back over the years, it's like the first time that somebody ever asked me to paint one of their pets on a bar sign. I was like,
Which you're crushing
okay,
lately.
I love
Yeah.
them.
Yeah, you're crushing them. I think it's like one of my favorite things that I see that you're doing lately.
Thank you. Yeah, no, they're
Yeah.
super, super fun. But I remember the first time somebody asked me to do that, I was like, I don't know if I can do that. And then even some of like the requests for like different kinds of seating charts. Like a couple years ago, a girl asked me to write on surfboards for her seating
I
chart, which
remember
was like,
seeing that. Yeah.
yeah, way out of my comfort zone. And now people are liking these like jugs, like garden type, like pots and vases and stuff. So I've had a couple
Mm,
of them now, and I feel way more comfortable now. But like the first year was last year, and that was definitely way out of my comfort zone. I'm like, oh God, a seating chart on like a round surface that isn't even, like, and I'm very like precise. Like I'm sure
right.
you've seen my work. Like I'm very like, okay, this all has to be measured out and like be perfect. So like to give me like a curved surface for a seating chart the first time was like, ooh, gosh.
I don't know. You found a way to kind of deliver on all those.
Yeah.
Yeah. Operating your own business and an
Mhm.
entrepreneur in that way. Have there been any large crises in the what 6, 7 years that you've been running this?
Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Like whether if that's from like a lack of clients for like a given season, just like from a revenue standpoint,
Yeah.
or I don't even know. You had stuff like being like broken or not arriving to clients on time at a certain
Yeah.
point for their
I
wedding or something
mean,
like that.
both. I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, I had this client bring me a framed map. So it
Hmm.
was like a map that was in a glass frame, and she wanted her seating chart written on it. And I like had it
Okay.
on the ground and I was working over top of it. And I was literally almost done. And I like leaned on the glass the wrong way and the whole thing shattered underneath me. And this was like 2 days before she was going to pick it up. I burst into tears. I was like, oh my God, what am I going to do? Luckily, there's a frame shop right up on Washington Street, which is like 10 minutes from my apartment.
Right.
So I like run this frame up there. I'm like, please, 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 could you please replace this glass? Like, I need this by tomorrow. And they
Yeah, yeah.
fixed it, no problem, replaced it. I had to rewrite the whole thing, but it was fine. And the client had absolutely no idea that that happened. So
Dude,
unless she
good on
listens
you
to
for
this,
it.
she will still be unaware.
Yeah,
um,
whatever. You're good with it. Who cares?
yeah. But yeah. And then last year, I actually like, I struggled a lot with just where I was going, what my prices should look like, who I wanted to book last year. So
Yeah.
I had hired a like a business coach. She was like a money management and mindset business coach. I hired her in
Hmm.
December of 2021, I think. So we were working together for like the first half of 2022.
Yeah.
And I was talking to her. I hired her like at the end of that year where I had 90 weddings, and I was like, I can't do this again. Like, I'm losing my love for what I do. I'm
Yeah.
just burning out.
Yeah.
And I don't want to be working 24/7. Like, I want to love my business, but I also want to love my life. um, so we were working together, and, we were redoing my prices. We were redoing the way that I structure proposals, all of these things. And one of the things we did was increase my minimum investment. So we increased that, and I still got a couple like leads here and there, but every proposal that I sent out, because I also switched from doing an itemized proposal to a full like package and just giving one price at the very bottom. So, it's like, here's my design and project management, and then here's, your welcome sign, your seating chart, your bar sign, and this is how much it is. And I think out of like 10 to 15 proposals that I sent out, only two people said yes, like, and booked. And I was like, oh my, like, what am I doing? Like, this is a disaster. Like, and then I was like, did I waste money on this coach? Like, I don't know. So, she was great. We like talked through everything. We let it go for like 2-ish months, but for those 2 months, it really affected my cash flow because, with weddings, it's like you're taking deposits and then you're taking final payments. So for 2 months over last summer, it's like I wasn't getting any deposits coming in. So I was like, oh my, I don't have money to pay myself this summer. And it was just such like I was going to say mind fuck, but I don't know if I can swear on here.
Say it, please. I've already dropped
Okay.
a couple F bombs, so you're very fine with it.
Okay, great. But yeah, it was like such a mind fuck of like, am I failing? Like, am I not good at this anymore? Do people not see the value in what it is that I'm offering? Because they're reaching out to like have a consult call with me, but they're turning down these proposals. Um, and there were a lot of days where I was just like, baby, this isn't what I should be doing anymore. Like, I can't seem to figure this out. Maybe I have already reached like the ceiling of what people are willing to pay for this type of service. And like, that's just it. Now I need to figure out something else to do with my life. But I restructured a few things. I like dropped my minimum back down. Um, and started doing like itemized proposals again. And as soon as I started doing that, I had people booking again. And the average of what they were booking was larger than like, I had gone from like a $2,500 minimum, dropped it down to 1950. I was like, I think there's like a psychology thing with like a $2,000 threshold. Um, but then as soon as people started booking again, their average weddings were $3,000. So like it wasn't a matter of the pricing. It was a way of like the way that I was presenting it. And I think just that like minimum price point, like I think that people wanted to be able to get their foot in the door at something that felt a little more comfortable for them, and then go from there. And like a lot of people that I work with tend to add on to their proposals as well over time. You know, like we may start with 4 or 5 things, and then they'll be like, oh, I actually need like menus, and I need ceremony programs, and I also need table numbers. Like they think of things after the fact, or as we're starting to work together, or as like they see me posting something on Instagram, which is really great. um so yeah, that was definitely a struggle. And it was also just the thing, I think it was like I hadn't worked with anybody at that price point yet, so it was also trying to like reach that new client, you know what I mean?
Right, right, right. Well, it's such
um
a, I mean, it's such a business. Like the wedding industry is a business. So
mhm.
it makes sense. I mean, I'm going through it right now. It's where it's all of a
Yeah,
sudden you're like, oh yeah, just going to need some, some table cards or something for like for place seating. And then all of a sudden it's
right.
like, no, we got this and this and this and this, and it
Yeah.
just keeps adding up. So
Yep.
it makes a ton of sense of like finding a value that gets people kind of in the door with you. Then they're invested in you. And I have no doubt that you're like the warm hug around them of being like, I got you, you're
Yeah.
safe. And then all of a sudden then the services kind of add up, which is great.
Yep.
How do you typically come about your leads? Is it just through word of mouth?
Yeah, a lot of it is through word of mouth, Instagram, and then a lot of vendor referrals now.
Mm,
So
hmm.
there's a planner that I work pretty closely with, and she's been really great passing work on to me for her clients, and some venues in the area as well. They'll like have me on their preferred vendor list. So if you're going there and you're getting married, they're usually like, here are vendors that we like to work with, and
Yeah,
I'll
yeah.
be on that list, which is really nice. So
That's super
I
nice.
feel like
Yeah.
word of mouth and then like other vendor and venue referrals are nice because the lead is kind of already warmed up to you, right? Like they already have a, oh, we know this person, we've worked with her before, she does really
Right.
great work, she's a pleasure to work with, etc., as opposed to just, you know, kind of like a cold Google hit, or even just finding me on Instagram.
Yeah.
But Instagram is nice too, because if somebody starts following you for a while before their wedding, or even maybe before they're engaged, I've had a couple people who are like, I've been following you since before I've been engaged, and like I'm so excited to finally reach out, which is awesome. So it's like they kind of get to know you
Yeah.
through your social media too, depending on what it is that like you're sharing.
What's the average number of just like bridezillas that you have to deal with? Is it up
Honestly,
there?
no, I
No?
really haven't had any. Like, knock on wood. I don't know
Damn.
why, but like I
Yeah.
can't complain. Like the only clients that I've ever had to complain about are honestly when I worked with like the mother of the bride.
Mama. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, they tend to have a lot of opinions.
Yeah, of course they do. It's like their baby's wedding, right? They're
Yeah,
gonna, yeah. You're not doing
yeah,
it as good as that they, intend for it to be in their eyes, sort of thing. Yeah,
right, right. But
yeah,
honestly, like I've tried to think back because I do get that question, and I do also know that like I know a lot of people, even other calligraphers that I've talked to, who are like, I refuse to do weddings anymore. Like I don't like the people that I'm working with, and I'm like, I really only have good things to say about the people that I've been able to work with over the past 5, 6 years now.
yeah,
So I feel
yeah.
very lucky.
Well, and I would imagine, and correct me if I'm wrong, but like being based in Jersey, in Hoboken, you got 2 steps away, you got New York City.
Hmm.
That feels like, in terms of the money, and I mean, I'm an Italian boy, grew up
Hmm.
in the summers out in New York and all that stuff. Like, I
Yep.
know what like a Jersey girl, like in terms of the money and
Yeah.
investment and the wedding, like it feels kind of like an ideal situation for you starting your business in your industry and then for acquiring clientele. Like, am I
Yep.
wrong by assuming that?
No, definitely not. Um, that for sure helps. Like I think, if I moved out to like the middle of nowhere, Pennsylvania or whatever, like I
Southern
don't,
Indiana.
yeah. Yeah, I don't know if the wedding industry would be the same or if the money is the same there. I mean, granted, I'm sure my own personal living expenses would also be less. So, like,
Yeah,
maybe the prices that I'm looking to charge in order to pay my bills and support my life would vary.
right.
Um, but no, it's definitely a good area to be for the wedding industry. Also, like being in Hoboken, I'm kind of in that general age of like 27 to like 37 where people are getting married.
Right.
So, one person gets married and they're like, oh, my best friend is getting married next year. Like, I'm going to refer her to you. And then she comes to me. So it's a nice place to be for just like word of mouth for, the prices that you're looking to charge. I mean, nobody's trying to take advantage of anybody for sure, but it's expensive to live here and it's
Yeah.
expensive to put on a wedding here.
Yeah.
Um, but I think I've hit a nice point in the market too, where there are a lot of very Jersey weddings here.
Preach.
um, and a lot of my clients will say in like their email, they're like, we're not looking for like the typical New Jersey ballroom wedding. Like, we're looking for something
Bullshit.
different.
Bullshit. Mm-mm.
No, but they are though. Like, they'll get married at places that are not, like the Italian ornate over the top like ballrooms. Like, they're
It's
looking for
all
something that
no,
feels a
it's all.
little
Have you
bit
seen the television
different.
show? The oh god, it's like the Gypsy show that was on like TLC. You know what I'm talking
The
about?
Gypsy Show, no.
Yeah, there was like I would like profile all these crazy gypsies. They're just like basically white trash gypsies, but like they go
Okay.
like crazy gowns, and it's like the big. I'm just like, dude, you have to be getting some of these people for sure,
But I mean, I have definitely for sure.
for
But
sure.
I
Yeah,
have a nice mix of like people who are also just kind of down to earth and just want to like have a really beautiful day. They care about the
yeah,
details, which is what I
right, right,
provide.
right.
They want their guests to feel really comfortable, but they just want to have a beautiful day celebrating with their friends and family. And,
Absolutely. Yeah. Is there a certain service that you offer now that like it's just a favorite of yours? Like you absolutely love to do this?
that's a good question. I mean, definitely the dog bar signs. Like, if you
Yeah.
have a dog, I want to work with you and I want to paint your dog for
Yeah.
something. Your bar
You're
sign, a
really
table
good at
sign, it
it.
doesn't
Yeah.
matter.
Yeah.
Thank
You're
you.
really good at
Yeah,
it.
it's super super fun. And I also like that because it allows me to like flex the creative muscles that I was developing back in college and high school and whatnot, and that I kind of like let fall a little bit by the wayside when I started working a corporate job and then started just doing the actual calligraphy lettering. So it's nice to take out the paintbrushes and stuff and do that.
How adverse would you be if you had a client that was like, we don't want our dogs, we want self-portraits? Would you do it?
No.
You don't feel confident enough that you could do it?
No.
Oh, like now I just want to see that. If there's like any of your future clients
I was
that
like,
ever
don't
see
you come
I
at me
dude,
being like, can you please paint me and Lexi for our wedding?
oh my God, I would love that so much.
I'd be like, no,
Because
I cannot.
it's like one of the hardest things because it's anatomy. We look at faces every single day. So as soon
Yeah.
as like an eye is off or an ear is, you're just like, what the hell is up with this thing? But
Yeah.
as soon as you get one of these, you have to let me know because somebody's going to
Okay.
ask you to do a self portrait, and I hope you take
Okay.
it on. So yeah.
All right. We'll see.
Well, you also mentioned too, just in terms of like other calligraphers in the area. I just was going to ask, like, what's your community like? Like your artistic, kind of your solopreneur like community in Hoboken. It seems like you have a pretty good base, right?
Yeah, definitely. So there aren't that many other calligraphers like right in Hoboken, but in the surrounding areas like Jersey City, New York City, there's a group of us. We have like a little WhatsApp like group messaging, which is really nice. Like, if anybody has like a question, like something to include in a contract or a difficult client that they're looking for advice on, or even just like a price check, like, does this sound right for this service that somebody's asking about? It's nice that we have that to like bounce off of each other. Um, so I'm thankful for that. And then in Hoboken, honestly, there was like a really great Hoboken creative community before the pandemic. We would get together once a month. Sometimes it would just be a happy hour. Sometimes it would kind of be like a learning session and we'd have like a guest speaker come and like chat with us about something. But once the pandemic hit, people moved out. They're not in Hoboken anymore. They're farther out in New Jersey, and that kind of just stopped. So it would be nice to start something like that back up.
I mean, do you feel it really helps you? It's almost like a therapist. Like you have someone that is I mean, they're kind of non-partial, but they understand of like the hiccups that you're dealing with, so you can just go and be like, I got to vent for a second, and then
Exactly.
let me know what you're do about it. Yeah,
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. It's really nice because otherwise, I mean, this journey can be lonely if you don't have other people that you can chat with or vent to or bounce ideas around off of.
yeah, dude, you're telling me. I feel like I'm
Yeah.
always of like I don't have any, especially what I'm into now. It's like I got nobody. Like it's just like you're spending hours of like, oh, I'm gonna try to figure this stuff out. I don't know, but
Yeah.
that's awesome that you have that because I definitely like I yearn for that, and I'm
Yep.
trying to find better ways to create and then get involved in
Hmm.
like existing, like groups and all social circles and stuff like that. So
Yep.
that's awesome. I was going to ask you, so what's next for Write Pretty for Me? Like, what's the evolution that you kind of see for this business? And maybe you haven't put a ton of thought process, but in the next like 1 to 5 years, like, is there anything in particular that you've kind of envisioned either setting up for yourself? Like, what does that look like for Elaine?
Yeah. Good question. No, I've definitely been thinking about this a lot lately. Um, I do still want to be working with couples, but I definitely want to decrease the amount a little bit more, make it a little more
Hmm.
limited for next year and going forward. And then I would like to be putting more time and energy into like the business education side of it. So at the beginning of this year, I had some extra time and started offering like mentorship, like just one-on-one, 1 hour call mentorship sessions with other calligraphers. And that was so fun. Like it was just really, really fun to connect with other people who aren't quite where, you know, I am, but want to be able to get there and like just bounce ideas around off of or get some feedback on or, kind of see like an inside look at, oh, well, how did you do that? How did you get to where you are? How did you get courage to leave your job? Anything like that. So that was really fun. And like, it's been fun too, because I've had like a couple of them DMing me, like, oh, I finally did like the styled shoot that we chatted that I like about doing. And,
Nice.
I finally got my website up and running and I got professional photos taken. And like, it's really cool to watch them on that journey and like
Hmm.
kind of remind myself of like, that's where I started too. And now
Yeah.
I don't know, it just feels really fulfilling to be able to like help people along on their path and figure out what that path is for them because everybody's is of course different. So as far as like the future of Write Pretty for Me, I see some sort of hybrid of like still working with couples on their weddings and actually doing the calligraphy, but also having this second part of my business now where I have more of a foot in like the calligraphy education side of like helping people figure out how to scale their business and kind of ditch like the 24/7 hustle and get like that sense of freedom and get back to like why you started your business in the first place, right? Like you started it because you wanted flexibility, you wanted to be able to set your own schedule, make whatever money you wanted to make, and live whatever kind of a lifestyle it is that you want to live. But I feel like it's really easy to just get bogged down and like taking on the client work and trying to reach the income goals and all of that that you almost like lose sight of your why in the first place. So like getting back to that and creating the business that actually supports that.
Do you ever think you'd bring in like a junior designer to help you with some of the wedding requests, or is that something you still
Yeah,
want to be pretty hands on with?
I think it's something I still want to be pretty hands on with. It's such a hard question. Other people have talked to me about that too. Like when it's, talking about scaling, it's like, well, yeah, I can only do so much as
Yeah.
one person. Um, but I'm also just like, I feel like people hire me for the style that I provide. So then it would be
Hmm.
like, well, then do I have to teach somebody that style? Or do I have to be like, I'm not available for your wedding date, but here is somebody who is, and this is what their style looks like. Do you
Right.
like that? Do you approve of it? I don't know. It just still sounds kind of complicated to
Yep.
me.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean, I think, and also that's your name on the work too. So it's like even if you brought
Hmm.
somebody on, and yeah, who knows of how long that like education would take to get somebody to like at a level that you are satisfied creatively with like what they're putting out as a product,
Right.
and that could
Right.
definitely be a headache. Um,
And I know
where
people
do,
who do that, but I just don't know if that's what I see for myself.
Yeah, yeah, I think it's fair with it. So I was just gonna ask, where are you finding new inspiration these days? Like
That's a
where
great question.
again, you're a fine art major, you've been creative as a
Hmm.
kid. You're now this business owner. You're kicking ass at it. Almost dropped the fucking in
Trying.
there. Say it right now. But now, again, these days, like as a creative person, finding new inspiration, bringing up new ideas, kind of challenging yourself in that way. What have been some avenues that have been super helpful for you with that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like the thing that's been most inspiring to me lately is just getting out of Hoboken and traveling, like whether it's going abroad somewhere or just doing like a weekend trip somewhere else. I just feel like getting out of my typical environment and comfort zone has been really inspiring lately and has just like made me think of if and when at some point I say like write pretty for me is no more, like my hand is falling off, I cannot do this anymore. What's next? And I feel like I've been having like the bigger ideas just being in a new place and getting my mind thinking about other things and what else just like the world has to offer.
I think that's great with it. I mean, I don't know. Again, that's another thing. Like I'm constantly always searching for like where is it that I find new. For me right now, it's like being a new dad. Like that's
Yeah.
it's the best. But it's just one of those things with like my daughter and finding that. But I love. I mean, you guys, you just got back from where? Where were you in Iceland,
Yeah, we were in Iceland. Yeah.
dude? Awesome.
It was amazing. It was amazing. It
Yeah,
was, we did like a
yeah,
9-day camper van trip. So we were driving around in our little van and just camping in each spot around the country.
yeah,
And it was incredible. And it's like, I definitely want more of that in my life in the next couple years. So it's like figuring out to like,
yeah.
what does then, if I know travel is like something that's really big and important to me, then how can I continue to create and mold and shape this business to support that? Because going back to like what you said earlier too, it's like I don't have vacation days, etc. So it's not as easy. I mean, even with a corporate job, it's not necessarily easy to just take a couple of weeks off. But that is also the beauty of being an entrepreneur is you can support that in some way. So it's just figuring out what that looks like and how to actually do it.
Yeah, I mean, you again, you own something. Like all the
Right.
work that you're putting in to write pretty for me, like that's yours. Like nobody can take that away. Which I think that's like the really like the valuable thing. Like
Yep.
that it's whether if you slack, then maybe the business slacks. But if it's like if you're able to find new ways and keep it growing, then like that business grows with you, and I it's awesome.
Yep.
Well, dude, I can't thank you enough for doing this and sitting down with me.
Yeah. This is
Hopefully, I
so
didn't completely
fun.
suck doing this. Good. Well, I had a
No.
blast. This is fun.
Hopefully I
But
didn't.
hey, I want to give you a quick second. Plug and play anything that you want for people to check out, social media, anything like that. Go.
Yeah, definitely. So I'm Write Pretty For Me. My handle is at Write Pretty For Me on like everything, Instagram, Facebook. I don't have Twitter. I have a Threads that I never use. You were on Threads for a while. I feel like I kept seeing. Are you still doing it?
I don't know, man. It's like a
I don't
hit
know
or
what it
miss
is.
there.
I
It's
know.
it's it's literally just Duck's Twitter. That's all it is. So yeah.
Yeah. And then my website is writeprettyforme.com, which I have a new website launching at the end of September, which I'm super stoked about. I just worked with a brand and web designer for the first time ever. I usually like do everything myself. And I was like, I'm going to release this to somebody else. And she's crushing it.
Amen.
So I'm super excited to have that launch. And that will have like a whole section dedicated to education for calligraphers too, which I'm super pumped about because I feel like I haven't had a real clear area on my website yet for that. So that'll be good.
Go check you out. You're amazing. Big
Thank
fan. Love you, bud.
you.
Thanks
Thank you.
again.
Right
Yeah.
back to you.